So is property education a total scam, or is it a shortcut to HMO success? In 2024, I spent £15,000 on 2 property education academies and also a property retreat. In this video, I will break down the good, the bad, and the bits people don't usually talk about. And make sure you stick around to the end, because I'll be explaining the costly mistakes to avoid. This really could save you thousands. Hi, I'm Adam. I'm a doctor who invests in HMOs as a side business. Now, let me take you back to where it all started for me. In July 2023, I was working as a doctor in the pharmaceutical industry. Now, on paper, everything was rosy. I had a 6-figure job and I had all the corporate perks. However, there was one big problem. I had no passive income. I needed to create a side hustle where I did not have to exchange time for money. And at the time I had no kids, so there was really no excuses. Now was the time to act. So I started watching lots of YouTube, listening to podcast after podcast, reading books. I'm sure this sounds familiar. Then one day an ad popped up for a totally free 1-day property event in Milton Keynes. So I signed up. So I went to Milton Keynes on that Saturday morning and it really was a game changer. I went into a room, there was about 30 people, all different walks of life, and then the property training started and it truly was motivational. The teachers, they shared all types of property strategies, HMOs, buy-to-let, land development, serviced accommodation. All of this was completely new to me at the time. And then they talked about one thing that really changed everything for me. That was the concept that you can use other people's money to buy property. At the time I had less than £30,000 in my bank account to invest, so that was the big block for me. The educators talked about fear, false expectations appearing real, and I realized that my block about money could be overcome, and that's what really changed my mindset. Speaking of mindset, the educators really honed in on that. Essentially, the takeaway message was, think you can, and if you think you can't, you're probably right. So essentially what you tell yourself is likely what's going to happen. And then came the pitch. So the providers were making an offering that was stacked. So usually it would cost £15,000, but on this day with limited slots and limited time only, it was being sold for £1,500. And you had to put your hand up if you were an action taker. They really got you into that mindset of doing something and not wasting time. And I'll be honest, I surprised myself. My hand went up. I was one of the people who went to the back of the room. I got out my Amex and I paid for the next stage, which was a 3-day boot camp. So my journey had begun, and I'm not gonna lie, I was worried this was a scam. But then reassuringly, emails started to come in and it was clear it wasn't a scam. In fact, I was very pleased to see some online training modules that were available before the bootcamp. This really was a structured e-learning course where you could go through at your own pace. And really the offering was very good quality. So it went through everything from starting out. So what is your why, all the way to the different strategies. And then once again, it touched upon private finance, specifically joint ventures. So this is something where one person brings in the knowledge and the ability to apply time to it, the sweat equity, let's say, and the other person brings in the financial equity. And then you buy a property together and you split the profits 50-50. So I started speaking to friends and family as the course providers suggested, and actually one of my very good friends from medical school, who was a successful entrepreneur in his own right, I told him what I was doing and I couldn't believe it when I got a WhatsApp back saying, let's do it together. So before I knew it, shortly after that 1-day event, I'd made great progress. I'd had a business partner who was going to put in most of the money. I had set up a limited company, the bank account, and most importantly, from learning about the different strategies, I'd really focused on what strategy was best for me, and that was HMOs. Why HMOs? Well, because of the consistent high cash flow that they offer. And crucially, I'd actually found an investment area. So this did take some time. I was initially looking in the Midlands and up north, but I eventually settled on a gold mine area that was much closer to home. And I think as a busy professional, that's definitely the route you want to go down if you want to do this seamlessly alongside your 9-to-5 job. And fast forward to October 2023, it was time for the boot camp. So I'd done all my e-modules before this and I came ready, and I'd already set up my business and knew my strategy. And once again, the atmosphere in the room was truly incredible. You had people from all walks of life there, and everyone had the same desire to, make a change in their life. And once again, the trainers really did convey this sense of urgency and share some very motivational case studies. And this was one of my first big learnings, actually. So when I arrived at the bootcamp, I think I was probably the only person out of the entire 30 who'd actually gone through the online modules. Most of the people hadn't got time to it or haven't found time. So it was my first insight into actually people are paying for property education, but not everyone actually puts it into action. And then came the selling. So on day 2 and 3, everyone was given the opportunity for the next stage. And once again, there was sort of a stacked offering. You had the inner circle level, which was the top tier. Then you had an intermediate platinum level, and then you had an entry level gold academy level, each with different price points. Limited time only, limited spaces. Scarcity was created. My head truly was spinning. And then once again, I did something that surprised me. I did it again. I signed up to the highest level. This really did surprise myself, and the next few days, wow, call it buyer's remorse, call it what you want, but the head was spinning. Essentially, I finally settled on downgrading to the entry level offering. But I really did tell myself, I was in my early 30s, no kids yet, something had to change. So I went all in. I committed to it and threw myself into the deep end and got started. I didn't want to waste any money or any time. So I started doing viewing after viewing, and after about 24 viewings, I finally had my first offer accepted. And it really was perfect timing. I had my first offer accepted in the November, and the academy started in the January. So my year in the academy would correspond with my first project from start to finish. So what was the offering? Well, in my level, it was fortnightly evening calls, and they were group calls with about 30 people present, where people would come and share what they've been up to and get some feedback. There was also in-person monthly events as part of the academy, and then of course there was an online portal where past academy days education would be shared. So during my first HMO project, this academy support and mentorship really was invaluable. I could go through my deal analysis, I could talk about my floor plans. There were certain issues that cropped up during my refurb, so it was helpful talking them through first time in real time. And of course you would be learning off other people who were bringing their own cases and their own questions to the group sessions. But here's the honest truth, the online content that you got after joining the academy was not vastly different to what you had when you did the bootcamp. Most of the education had already happened in the bootcamp, and the academy was really just sharing previous educational episodes. And one of the big promises was access to the power team. But in reality, this was a list of mortgage brokers and solicitors. It didn't really go into the depth that I was hoping for. So I was under the impression builders, one of the big blocks when you're doing your first project, would be recommended. This wasn't the case. Similarly, you were under the impression that you would be able to get access to private finance, but there was no such thing. That was all down to you. And the academy didn't really go particularly deep on HMOs. Yes, they taught the basics, and yes, that was enough to get started. But I was under the impression that my educators, yes, they'd done HMOs in the past, but when I was talking about things I was doing, such as seeking for a commercial valuation with a 6-bed HMO, they were saying this wasn't possible. But I knew it was possible because I was actually doing it firsthand. So I realised I would need further HMO specific training. And one morning I was listening to the Inside Property Investing podcast. They were talking about a HMO bootcamp they were running. This was a 12-week program that cost £1,000, where there would be fortnightly calls, as well as an online training course that would take you from start to finish everything you needed to know about HMOs. This course really gave me that HMO specific focus training that I was missing. And what was great was that the trainer was still doing HMOs. This Inside Property Investing course really did fill that gap. It gave me the HMO specific training I really needed. It took you from finding your area all the way to how to manage a refurb. It truly was exceptional value for money. Also, it gave you lifetime access to the online training, and you could join future 12-week bootcamps when they would happen in the future. So now I was on 2 academies. One that was teaching broadly on property education, really on what mindset you needed to have and how to raise finance. And then I had Inside Property Investing that was giving me HMO specific training, so they complemented each other perfectly. Then in May, I attended a property education retreat in Marbella. This was a 5-day retreat, once again with about 15 other people, where we didn't stay in a villa, but all the training took place in a villa with a lovely pool. And the focus really was on mindset and setting your vivid vision for the future. This involved visualizing 3 years ahead. What would your dream life look like if everything in property went to plan? It really was very inspirational and reminded everyone of the why we got started in property investing. And of course, it was great fun. We did Oceans Beach Club, we did masterminding by the pool, and the weather was fabulous. So getting off the grid really was a novel experience for me, and I left that retreat with even more fire in my belly. But once again, in the retreat, there was selling for future products. Now at this time, I had the HMO knowledge and I'd already got started. I felt like I had enough knowledge to take me forward, but they were selling the next retreat, the next couple of years in the academy. But I knew what was coming, and this time I'd left my credit card at home, and I was the only person actually, I believe, out of the 15 who did not purchase further training. But I knew for me this was the right decision. Also, as part of my package, I was allowed to attend a 3-day boot camp on sales. Now, as a medic who's trained in the NHS, this was very different to me. But I guess it's part of getting out of your comfort zone and being part of the growth mindset. I realized there was very valuable skills, sales negotiation skills, when investing in property. It is a people's business after all. So that was a useful experience, and it certainly helped me subsequently when negotiating, for instance, with estate agents. So when the academy ended in January 2025, a lot had changed for me. So my results was I'd taken my first HMO project from inception all the way to completion and refinance. I was able to recycle most of the money that went into that first deal, and me and my business partner were able to purchase 2 other HMO projects. In total, I raised £315,000 that year, and I've really learned the skill of using other people's money and HMO, buy, refurbish, refinance, rent. And I'd say, what was the biggest takeaway from the training academy? I'd say it was accountability. So I saw various outcomes for different people. Basically, if you turned up, rolled up your sleeve, put in the action, you would get results. However, many people turned up wanting the trainers to do the work for them, and they didn't really get the same kind of results. And without doubt, having someone there to speak to as I went through my first project really was invaluable. I learned some really big takeaways. For instance, when doing a refurb project on a HMO, you don't charge 20% VAT, it's actually 5% VAT. So that alone saved me tens of thousands of pounds. And did I really need the top level inner circle? Absolutely not. So this did involve one-to-one coaching and inner circle days where they would go and do fun things such as horse racing. Now that's lovely, but I think for the additional cost, it was absolutely not worth that. And I'm very happy with the level of the academy I ended up going with. Okay, so let's break down the pros and cons of property education and mentorship. So the pros, I think, first of all, safety net. So you're doing this for the first time, having someone you can speak to run through your deal analysis or your project, your floor plan, really can save you very expensive mistakes. Something else I really enjoyed and I found really motivated me was being surrounded by like-minded individuals, all different walks of life, but everyone with a similar goal. They wanted to change their life and build a second income stream. And the training formats were very convenient. You know, this was post-pandemic, everything was digital. So if you're a busy professional working in a busy, demanding job, like I was as a doctor, it was very easy to fit this around your day job by doing nights and weekends. Also, top tip, the training expenses are tax deductible if you're doing it through a limited company. But of course, there's some cons. The elephant in the room, it's expensive. We're talking thousands of pounds here, and that should not be ignored. Second, it does take up time. You need to put in the time and effort to really reap the rewards of the education. And as I've said before, you really need to do the work yourself. So the training itself is theory heavy, but there's not much execution. That is all down to you. So it's up to you to make the most of it what you can. What was the return on investment? Well, from my first HMO alone, over the period of a year, that would pretty much pay off the majority of my property education. So we're looking at a near 100% return on investment there. So that truly is very high. I invested in myself, and the investment was definitely worth it. And I think something I did right was I invested in education right at the start of my journey. I didn't waste time going between different strategies. I just got started with education straight away, and this has saved me a lot of time. So I guess looking forward, what role will property education play for me? I've now got the core HMO knowledge. I've done it. I've seen the project through to start to finish. I've got 2 more projects ongoing. So I will not be paying for any more property education such as this, because as a busy professional working as a doctor, I need to focus. I've got my one strategy now. I've got that knowledge, and now it's time to execute, rinse and repeat. But that being said, I will still be doing bespoke educational events here and there. So for instance, this year I went to the HMO Summit and Awards, which was a truly brilliant experience and really upskilled me even further. But can you do it all on YouTube? In my humble opinion, you can't. YouTube truly is fantastic for getting started, for giving superficial top-line knowledge across the various strategies, and there's brilliant content out there. However, what a property education academy gives is it gives you that structure in a chronological sequence, and it also gives you that community feeling, which I'm not sure about other people, but being surrounded by like-minded people truly empowered me and it motivated me to get work done. And I think it's all about leverage. What you're doing with property education is you're leveraging other people's experience and knowledge to get you further and faster. And unlike YouTube, you can get really specific, tailored advice about your specific situation. So would I have done my first HMO deal without property education? I think the honest truth is I would have got my first deal with the bootcamp alone. But taking that from start to finish without the ongoing mentorship of the academy would have been much, much harder. And I'm sure I would have lost more hair, got more grey hairs, and I would have been much more stressed. I think on reflection, yes, the bootcamp would have got me that 1 deal, but the academy got me the 3 deals. Being surrounded by like-minded people, hearing about how other people are scaling, and private finance, it really gave me that belief to do it myself and execute. So who is property education right for? It's certainly not everyone. In my opinion, there's 2 main people. Firstly, like myself, I think busy professionals who don't have much time to waste. So for me, it gave me efficient, concise training, which I could do in and around my day job. Second, I think beginners who are completely new to property education can really fast track your knowledge of all the different strategies and give you basic tips about whether to do it in your personal name or a limited company. So I've already said I wouldn't change anything, but my tip for someone who's on a budget and knows what property strategy they want to go down and specialize in, I would recommend don't do broad generic property training. Find a course that's tailored to your specific strategy and go all in. So final tip, property education without action is just expensive procrastination. That's the truth. So is property education a scam? Well, in my experience, it's not, but make sure you do your due diligence and make sure the training provider is actually doing what they're teaching. The key thing to really emphasize is that it's not a magic bullet either. Property education alone will get you nowhere. You need to take massive action. So where would I be without attending that free event in Milton Keynes? Honestly, I think I'd still be back at square one. I don't think I'd have a project and I'd still be looking for my first house. But instead, now I've raised £325,000 and I've bought 3 HMOs. So I'm delighted I took that route. So if you found this video useful, I'm sure you'll like my next one. In my next video, I'm going to explain how I bought 3 HMOs in 10 months with £65,000, all whilst working full-time as a doctor. Thank you for watching, subscribe, like, see you in the next video.